UFC Vegas 66 betting and DraftKings show. We have 13 fights this Saturday, last one of the year. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. Kicking things off in the Bantamweight division, we have Sergey Morozov coming in as a minus 305 favorite. The comeback on Journey Newson is plus 255. And I favor the Morozov side in this matchup. I feel like he should have Newson covered. Morozov is a guy that I think is a well-rounded fighter. He's got skills wherever the fight goes. He's got some solid striking with powerful hooks, some solid leg kicks as well, but it's the grappling that takes him to the next level. He averages nearly 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. He pushes a high grappling pace, and we've seen him pay the price at times because the cardio isn't in that elite tier where when he pushes that high grappling pace, if he's unable to get the finish, he does slow down, and we've seen him pay the price for that in the past. However, I think he should have advantages wherever the fight goes against Journey Newson, who's coming off a decision win over Fernie Garcia, who's somebody that I don't rate very highly whatsoever. And Newson, he came on to the UFC primarily as a boxer. He does have a little bit of power, but he's defensively liable all over the place. He's never stuffed a takedown in the UFC. Anybody that's attempted a takedown has taken him down, and he's not going to be able to offensively land takedowns against a guy like Sergey Morozov, who I think is a much better grappler. So give me Morozov, even though it's a little bit concerning how hittable he is and how his cardio isn't the greatest. I do think that this is just a levels type of matchup for Morozov. So give me Morozov by decision. He's a solid target on DraftKings. He is expensive, but he has multiple takedown upside, which I always like to target. So give me Morozov by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up in the Flyweight division, we have Manal Kopp coming in as a minus 250 favorite. The comeback on David Dvorak is plus 210. And this is another one where I'm going with the favorite in Manal Kopp. I just think he's better pretty much wherever the fight goes. David Dvorak is not a bad prospect by any means. He's a solid striker, not really going to look to mix it up and grapple. He does have a bunch of finishes, but most of them came against low-level talent on the regional scene. And he's coming off a loss against Matheus Nicolau in his last fight, whereas Manal Kopp is coming off a big knockout victory against Zhalgas Zhumagulov. After that, he ended up getting popped for steroids, so he's been off for about a year, but I do think he's the more explosive fighter in this. I'd expect him to land the more powerful shots. Dvorak, not really a super powerful striker, although he does have a strong jab. He's going to mix in the leg kicks. I think Manal Kopp is going to be the one to land the bigger shots, and I actually think Manal Kopp, if he chose to wrestle, which I don't necessarily trust that he will, but I do think he would have basically all the grappling upside in this fight as well. So give me Manal Kopp by TKO. I'm not sure that Dvorak's durability is quite as strong as it would look on paper. He's only got one TKO loss, and that was a cut stoppage on the regional scene. But even in that Nicolau fight, we saw him getting lit up a little bit, getting stung on the feet. I think against an explosive striker like Manal Kopp, who does have power when he lets his hands go, knockdowns in back-to-back fights here, give me Manal Kopp by knockout. That's the official pick. Next fight up in the welterweight division, we have Hinat Fakhretdinov coming in as a minus 150 favorite. The comeback on Bryan Battle is plus 130, and this fight opened as basically a pick'em on both sides, and the line has significantly moved in Fakhretdinov's favor. And I have to say, I agree with the line movement. I think early prices on Fakhretdinov were very good because I expect him to win this fight with his continued grappling. We saw that in his debut against Andreas Michailidis. He landed 5 takedowns in that fight. The cardio seemed to be fine. Coming into that matchup, people were like, this guy just seems like a gasser, not a very good technical wrestler. I think we overrate our ability to identify how good somebody is in the wrestling. I think he could land takedowns at the UFC level. I don't think Bryan Battle is very good at defending takedowns. This is a guy that was taken down by Gilbert Urbina. He was taken down by Tresean Gore. He only defends takedowns at 55%. And you're like, well, maybe he can defend a few here, keep it on the feet. Even on the feet, Bryan Battle's striking defense is not good. This guy gets hit way too often in just about every single one of his fights. So even if he were to get the ideal fight from Fakhretdinov here, I'm not even sure that he would be able to capitalize in such a big way. So give me Fakhretdinov. I think he's going to be able to take Bryan Battle down multiple times. I think he's going to be able to wear on him and grind on him. And I actually think he could get him out of there. There's a lot of people talking about Fakhretdinov's just a lay and pray guy. Like, this guy has no finishing ability. 16 of his 19 wins have come inside the distance. And I know a lot of that was lower level talent on the regional scene, but Bryan Battle taking this fight on short notice, he's a punching bag on the feet as it it is and doesn't really know how to defend the grappling all that great. So give me Fakhretdinov to get it done inside the distance. Fakhretdinov by TKO is the official pick, and he's a strong target in the mid-range on DraftKings this week. And speaking of DraftKings, we had history made this weekend. Okay, I was reached out through Twitter DMs. I tweeted out earlier this week, Kunith MMA has decided to step up to the champ and give me a call out. He wants to go head to head on DraftKings. He shot me a DM. I said, absolutely. You know, king of the round table. I'm not afraid of any man on planet Earth. So I'm obviously going to take it to Kunith this weekend. I'm not concerned whatsoever. I have an idea of what he's going to do with his lineup. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter. We will be tweeting out the link to that contest for those that want to follow along. It's pretty rare to see somebody take a shot at the champ, but I welcome any challenger that's coming for my belt, because nobody's taking this belt from me on my shelf, and that includes you, Kunith. I'm coming for you on Saturday. Up next in the lightweight division, we have Rafa Garcia coming in as a -150 favorite with the comeback on Maheshete at +130. And I like the grappler in this one. I like Rafa Garcia here. I just expect his pace to be too much, and I actually still have concerns about Maheshete's ground game. I know he's primarily a striker, fights out of China, 9-1 professional record, 4 of his 9 wins coming by knockout, but most of those came against low-level Chinese regional talent, so I'm not going to rate him as this super big power puncher. He is going to be the much bigger fighter in there, and he did miss weight by a couple pounds as well, probably expecting Garcia to push that grappling pace, and I expect that too, and I think he'll have success doing so. He averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's got 8 submission victories on his record, and I still have a lot of question marks, like I said, about the ground game here of Maheshete. I think he's going to be taken down multiple times. I think he could be exposed on the mat potentially as well. Give me Rafa Garcia by submission. That's the official pick. And up next, we have another fun matchup in the bantamweight division as Sejukub Kakhramonov comes in as a -115, slight favorite against Saeed Nurmagomedov on the comeback at -105. And this is a really fun matchup that I think a lot of people are excited to see play out this weekend. I like the Kakhramonov side. I was super impressed with how he beat Ronnie Lawrence, a guy who I liked quite a bit. I bet him in that spot, and it was one of the worst bets I've made all year in hindsight, because he was just able to dominate Ronnie at his own game. He took him down 10 times in that matchup. He basically just big brothered him and manhandled him. Like, this dude is very powerful. He's got great cardio. I just favor all the intangibles, I think, lie on the Kakhramonov side, whereas Nurmagomedov, he's a flashy striker, a lot of spinning attacks and techniques. He does have a couple recent first round finishes, and I think that's why he's getting a little bit overvalued in this matchup, because if this fight gets extended, I don't think he's a great round winner, because he's historically a low volume striker, and I think a lot of those spinning attacks are going to be opportunities for Kakhramonov to close distance, clinch up, and probably peel him to the ground. So I think Kakhramonov's going to land multiple takedowns here. He's a decent striker himself, so I expect the striking to be competitive as well, and I think the power and the cardio all lie in the camp of Kakhramonov. So give me Kakhramonov by decision. That's the official pick, and he's another strong target in the mid-range on DraftKings, and he's actually the cheaper of the two on DraftKings as well. So he's probably going to be one of the more popular fighters this weekend. Up next in the welterweight division, we have Jake Matthews coming in as a -305 favorite. The comeback on Matthew Semmelsberger is +255. And I do like the Matthews side in this. I'm not going to bet him at this price because I do think it could be potentially a little bit inflated here. But I do think, stylistically speaking, this is a really good matchup for Jake Matthews, who's coming off what I think was a career best performance against Andre Fiallo. He got the knockout victory there, which we don't see very often from Jake Matthews. He's typically more of a grappler. He averages over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, and that's where I think the biggest advantage in this fight lies, is because Matthew Semmelsberger, he's more of a power puncher. He's primarily a striker. He is going to throw more volume, I'd expect, than Jake Matthews, but he does slow down as the fight goes on, and he only defends takedowns at 63%. So I'd expect this fight to be competitive in the striking, with maybe Semmelsberger landing a bit more volume and potentially having a little bit of a power advantage on the feet. But I do think Jake Matthews goes back to his bread and butter here. It's just so clear that that's the biggest advantage in this fight to me. So I'd expect multiple takedowns, and I do think he likely dominates the grappling. I think Matthew Semmelsberger is going to struggle to be able to work back to his feet, especially as we see the cardio start to go out as the fight goes on. So Jake Matthews by decision, that's the official pick. Up next in the women's strawweight division, we have Cheyenne Vlismas, a -180 favorite with the comeback on Corey McKenna at +155. And I've heard a lot of people trying to make a case for the dog here, where it's like Vlismas was taken down by Ruiz multiple times and could not get out of that position. Corey McKenna, if she can take her down, she's super live in this fight, and that's fine. But I think not enough people are making the case for the favorite here, because I think this has the potential to look like Cheyenne is a hindsight favorite of like -350. And that might sound crazy right now, but if you really peel back the layers here, if Corey McKenna can't get the fight to the ground, she is basically drawing dead, in my opinion. Cheyenne is going to double her up on volume. She has one of the highest significant strike rates in the division in terms of the striking volume on the feet. Corey McKenna has got those little T-Rex arms, 5-inch reach advantage for Cheyenne Vlismas as well. She's a much powerful striker. Corey McKenna doesn't really play defense on the feet, and I don't even trust her to be able to go to the grappling here. You know, this is the same fighter that only landed one takedown on Dana White Contender Series against Vanessa Demopoulos, who has poor takedown defense, might I add. Against Kay Hansen, she actually was credited with 0 takedowns, and I know she did kind of win some of the grappling exchanges there, but she didn't officially land any takedowns there. Where she did land takedowns was in her last 2 fights against Elise Reed, who she took down 3 times, who only has a 50% takedown defense and basically falls over whenever you shoot on her. Wasn't able to control her, only had about 3 minutes of control there. And then in her last fight against Miranda Granger, she took her down a couple times, dominated her in the grappling, and submitted her. But let's not forget, Miranda Granger defends takedowns at 33%. She's basically been dominated by any half-decent grappler in most of her fights here. So I think this line is actually being a little bit overvalued on the Corey McKenna side. And I know some steam has come in on Vlismas, especially the early prices, but I honestly don't even think it's enough here, because I think if Vlismas is able to keep this fight on the feet, I think she's going to blow out Corey McKenna in terms of the striking. And even in her last fight against Mallory Martin, who's not a great wrestler either, but that's typically what she tries to do, Vlismas stuffed all 5 takedowns there. I'd only expect her to be improving on that, knowing that her opponents are going to try to take her down, especially seeing how Ruiz was able to have some success doing that. So give me Vlismas. I think it actually is probably a blowout here. Give me Vlismas by decision. That is the official pick. Kicking off the main card in the middleweight division, Alexia comes in as a -280 favorite with Cody Brundage on the comeback at +240. And this is a fun fight. I definitely am expecting to see a finish one way or the other. And I do think it comes from the Alexia side, because I think the high volume boxing, the forward pressure, the power, 12 of his 17 wins have come by knockout. He's won 3 of his last 4 fights. 2 of those came by knockout, and I do think Brundage has a bit of a durability problem. I don't think his cardio is going to be able to hold up, especially if he's on the back foot here, and I expect the power and the volume to be too much for him to handle. I think Mikel probably stings him and ends up getting him out of there, so I don't mind Mikel winning this fight by knockout. He's a strong target on DraftKings, but I'm going to look to be overweight to this fight in general on both sides, because in the scenario where Brundage is able to get off on the grappling, you know, he does come from a collegiate wrestling background, and he is an opportunistic finisher. 7 of his 8 wins have come inside the distance. So if he's able to get the fight to the ground, which I'm not sure that he will be able to, but if he does, then I think that's where he could potentially have some success here. So as one of the cheaper underdogs on the slate, I do think there's at least a path for a ceiling there for Brundage. So I'll look to be overweight to both sides on DraftKings. It's a great fight to target starting off the main card. Next fight up in the lightweight division, my guy Drew Dober comes in as a -155 favorite against my other guy, King Bobby Green, on the comeback at +135. And this is a really fun matchup against 2 guys that are very good strikers in this division. Drew Dober, obviously more of a power guy. He's looking to stand and trade in the pocket until he lands that big left hand. He's coming off a couple knockout victories most recently as well. You know, most of his previous wins, I believe it's 7 of his 8 last wins have come by knockout. So it's clear what he's trying to do, right? Like, he wants to move forward and land that big left hand. Now, Bobby Green is more of a slick boxer. You know, he's going to be a higher volume guy. I think this could be one where it basically comes down to volume versus power. And we know judges have recently been scoring damage a lot more than any other factors. If you take a guy down and don't do much, if you land more volume, but it's empty volume and the bigger shots are coming from one side, we know that judges are supposed to favor that. and they definitely have made that a focus more recently. So I think this could be one of those spots where it's like, it's very close fight. I think it's lined about right, where Green could potentially land more volume. He's got a great jab. He can mix in the volume, but Dober is going to be the one having the more impact. You know, he has much more power. He sits down on his punches. And I think just the overall optics of Dober moving forward, Bobby Green trying to shake off all of every single time he gets hit. I just think all of the optics will favor Drew Dober. So I could see Dober swinging it on the scorecards if it does go the full 15 minutes. And I think I kind of do. I'm sort of torn between decision or Dober KO. Green has been knocked out a few times, but he is for the most part pretty durable as well. But Dober does pack a mean punch. So I think KO or decision wouldn't surprise me either way. It should be a competitive fight. The pick is going to be Dober, but I'm not ignoring the volume upside in a potential decision victory for Bobby Green because he's $1,000 cheaper on DraftKings, and I think that salary is going to play this week. So the official pick is Dober. I'm going to have exposure to both sides across multiple lineups. Next fight up, we have Juicy J coming in as a -165 favorite with the comeback on Alex Caceres at +140. And this is a fight where I favor the Erosa side. I do think he's the rightful favorite here, but this is a guy that I'm basically never looking to lay juice on. And whenever he has a minus in front of his name, I am just basically not interested in terms of placing a bet on him. And the reason being is because the durability and the fight IQ just really aren't there. You know, this is a well-rounded fighter, high volume, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, but he loves to stand and bang. And the problem with that is the durability really just isn't there. He's been knocked down 7 times in the UFC. He's been knocked out 5 times in his career. So even against a guy like Caceres, who doesn't really pack a powerful punch, I still don't really trust Erosa not to get hurt or get clipped at some point in this fight. And on the Caceres side, you know, he's a well-rounded fighter. He's put together a decent little win streak prior to the Sadiq Youssef fight, but it's been against all very low-level competition, and I just don't really see what a win by Caceres looks like here because he's probably going to be getting out-volumed, out-pointed on the feet. I think Erosa's more powerful on the feet as well, and I think Erosa would be the more likely of the two to land takedowns. So I think it's kind of Caceres drawing dead to a finish here. So give me Erosa. Erosa by decision is the official pick. I wouldn't be surprised at a finish either way because there's concerns on both sides, but Erosa by decision is the official pick. Next fight up in the flyweight division, Amir Albazi comes in as the biggest favorite on the card at -425. The comeback on Alessandro Costa is +340, and Amir Albazi's fresh off a submission victory against Francisco Figueiredo at UFC 278 in August. He's 3-0 in the UFC. The level of competition has been a little bit suspect. I think this guy deserves a legitimate top 5 test here, and this is kind of a far cry from top 5 competition against Alessandro Costa, who fought on Dana White Contender Series this past season, won a decision in a close fight against Luna, a guy that used to train with Brandon Moreno, who's a solid fighter in his own right, but didn't get the contract there, went back to Lux Promotion, got a first round finish there, and now he's getting the call up on short notice. He's not a bad fighter by any means, but I do think this is just too much too soon for him, and the level of competition is just a massive step up to a guy that's surging at the UFC level in Amir Albazi here. Costa's more of a counter striker. He's very low volume on the feet, but when he does let his strikes go, he's very powerful. 9 of his 12 wins have come inside the distance. He's more of a grappler, does have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I just don't see him being able to have sustained success in the grappling exchanges against Amir Albazi, who basically has out-grappled every single person that he's faced. Much tougher competition than that of the Dana White Contender Series alum in Costa here. So give me Amir Albazi. I think he gets it done inside the distance. Which brings us to our co-main event as Arman Tsarukyan comes in as a -195 favorite with Damir Ismagulov on the comeback at +165. And I like the Arman Tsarukyan side here. I've kind of always been a Tsarukyan guy. He's obviously coming off the decision against Mateus Gamrot, which was a very close fight, regardless of how you scored it. But Tsarukyan's a guy who, I know he's not a super technical striker, and I'd expect Ismagulov to have a striking advantage in terms of technicality. I think he's a better boxer, but I also think that the power and the more impactful shots are going to come from the Tsarukyan side. And I also think Tsarukyan will be able to hit takedowns here. I think he's the much better grappler in this fight, and I think that's going to play out. You know, this is a guy that has very good cardio, can go a very hard 15 minutes here, and I expect him to have those advantages to be able to get the fight to the mat where others have been unable to do so against Ismagulov, or who haven't been able to do it multiple times and be able to control him. I think Tsarukyan will be able to combine that with him just being the more explosive athlete and having the bigger shots. So even though Ismagulov is the bigger fighter, does have the better jab, you know, is probably the better technical striker, I think he basically has to keep the fight standing and outpoint him to a decision. And while that could happen, it's just not something that I think happens more times than not. So give me Tsarukyan by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event as Sean Strickland takes on Jared Cannonier. This fight is currently a pick on both sides, and I'm picking Sean Strickland here. It's not a super confident lean. You know, Sean Strickland's coming off a knockout loss to Alex Pereira. You know, a lot of people, myself included, thought that would be the biggest test for Pereira, a guy that is a good striker himself, but could theoretically, you know, mix in the takedowns like we all hoped he would, and obviously he didn't. Ended up getting flatlined, taking a dirt nap, whatever. I think we can put that behind us, though, and in terms of this matchup, I think he's just a better round winner than Jared Cannonier, even though we definitely have a confidence level of 0 trusting him to wrestle here. This is a guy that has a very low fight IQ. I do think that could potentially be a path to victory for him, even though I don't think he uses it. I feel like it's worth mentioning. And then on the feet, I think he's going to be the much more active striker of the two. You know, Sean Strickland has a great jab. He's going to be landing a lot more volume than Jared Cannonier. I think Cannonier is going to have the power advantage, though. And Sean Strickland coming off a knockout loss like that, which was a pretty brutal knockout, we don't know how his durability is going to hold up here. So I think Cannonier probably has to win by knockout here, but I think he's also pretty live to do so. I just am going with the more proven round winner in a fight that potentially could be 25 minutes. I favor the Strickland side, more volume, better cardio, just overall better striker in my opinion outside of the powers. But where it gets interesting is on DraftKings, because Sean Strickland's 8,500, Jared Cannonier is only 7,800, and this fight is a pick'em. So you can expect Cannonier to be one of the most popular fighters, if not the most popular fighter on the entire slate. So keep that in mind. You know, if you're just going to jam in Cannonier, Kakhramonov, and some of these other fighters that are going to be very popular, you're going to need to be active on late swap or just be able to just think about what you're doing with the rest of your lineup so that you're not duping 100 times this weekend. So that's it, guys. 13 fights, went over all of them. Check out fightnumbers.com where I'll have DraftKings player rankings broken down by salary tier. I'll have ownership projections, line movement, all that stuff as well. It's completely free. And also, if you're around on Saturday, I will be tweeting out the head-to-head matchup between me and Kunith MMA. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. As always, best of luck. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.